Welcome to Romance Unzipped, your happily ever after book club. I'm Holly.
And I'm Annie. We read, write, and obsess about all things romance.
Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Holly.
Hey, I'm Annie.
We are Romance Unzipped.
Yes, it's your happily ever after book clubbing podcast. Today, what are we reading?
We are reviewing The Prospects by KT Hoffman. This is a baseball sports romance.
Yes.
A male.
Mm-hmm.
And our two characters in this book are Gene Ionescu, the first openly trans professional baseball player, and Luis Estrada, who is undergoing his own queer awakening, and he's also a minor league baseball player that's been traded right at the start of the book to Gene's team.
Yeah. So our main tropes for this book were rivals to lovers and kind of hurt, comfort element too. Very much like the sweet falling in love story, and it had kind of a YA, which is young adult, feel to it because it was this new experience for both of them in their own way.
Felt more coming of age.
Yeah, exactly. And then also one of the tropes was a queer awakening on the part of Luis. So what's the steam level for our last bit of the quick and dirty?
I would call this a 3. There definitely are some explicit references to what exactly is happening in the body parts during the sex scenes.
And they have sex. They're very clearly having sex, yeah.
But then some of it is a little bit more metaphorical, a little bit
like we
almost,
came together.
Yeah, almost closed door type language, but not entirely.
Yeah.
I think it's just mostly very emotional. The way that the sex scenes are written is in service to the way they are falling more in love or growing closer together. And I think that's what made it not feel so explicit. But I think a 3 is the right way to describe it.
I think so too. Okay, so who are our baseball players?
Well, the main one is
the narrator.
The narrator. It's a single point of view, third-person book, and the narrator is Gene.
Ionescu.
He's Romanian. He's got pale skin, but throughout the season it gets tanned.
Brown curls.
Brown curly hair, and notably, he's 5'2".
Yes.
And that comes up a lot in the book.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's an intentional decision by KT Hoffman, the author, because he really discusses it a lot. But that really stuck out to me, because that's relatively short, even for a woman.
Yeah.
And for a professional athlete man is just way shorter than everyone else.
Yes. So the opening of the book is it's this interesting kind of third-person omniscient. So we're partially in Gene's thinking and partially bird's eye view, but Gene is reflecting on how happy he is to be part of baseball, because it's the one professional sport where your body can be any size body and you can still have a competitive edge. And it certainly comes across. I mean, he's a pro player and he's a minor league player professionally, and he's good, but also it was an interesting choice, because you would have to be a powerhouse arm thrower to
and he is a sprinter, and he's one of the fastest players on the team, and he steals a lot of bases
but he's a shortstop. You got to be able to like whip it.
Yeah. So obviously he's a very good athlete, and throughout the book he is always very confident in his baseball skills.
Yeah.
He has various hang-ups and lack of self-confidence at places, but it's never about his skill.
Yeah.
And he's just a really good athlete.
Yeah, so that's Gene, and I think he's 26.
Yeah, he's 26. He's got thick legs and just a big ass. Yeah.
Booty. And it's like the start of the season. They are in Portland, so they are the Beaverton Beavers, the minor league team in like service of the
Portland Lumberjacks.
Yes. And Holly is our go-to because she knows a lot about
baseball.
Yeah,
I'm a big baseball fan, so I was excited to read this book because it was kind of fun. I feel like I was the target demographic, that I like baseball and I read romance.
Yeah, and she even knows about minor league baseball. I mean, I live in San Francisco, so I'm like, oh, I know who the Giants are.
That's something.
But she knows the mascots of like minor league.
Well, not all the mascots. There's just like this whole counterculture with minor league teams. They tend to not take themselves as seriously.
Yeah.
They tend to lean into just having weird names and weird mascots and weird promotions.
Yeah.
They're they are not always getting the fan base and selling tickets purely for the baseball.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of that in this book, although for the most part, it was a sort of cut and dry minor league team.
Yeah, it didn't seem to have like wacky antics around
Right.
and the players took it seriously, and there was a fan base that also took it seriously because they started out not good, but they
were
good.
a struggling team, hadn't been in the playoffs in years, and that was
Yeah.
their goal. Let's make it to the playoffs. And of course,
Yeah.
the season started terribly. And then as these two rivals started to fall in love, then they started playing better together, and they led their team. And
Yeah.
it was one of those somewhat classic
Yeah.
storylines.
It was totally, and it was actually episode 6 I think was Poetry on Ice, and as I was reading the start of this book, I'm like, oh, it is the same structure of this one person, this is their home team, this is where they kind of are, and then this person who has hurt them, or there's been this hurt over time, suddenly comes and is
traded
recruited onto their team, and everything's upset.
It was the same kind of setup.
I think that's a classic sports.
It works.
It totally works.
I love sports romances because the season encompasses the timeline that you need and the tension and everything else. It's right there, baked in.
Yeah, you have like the running goal of whatever you're driving towards, like to not lose or to win the playoffs.
The championship or whatever it is.
Yeah. So then enter the rival, Luis Estrada. And he's beautiful.
He is a beautiful man. Even at the very beginning, when Jean doesn't want to like him and is harboring a lot
We hate to love him.
Yeah, harboring a lot of resentment from whatever happened to them before, he's still, you can tell he's got the hots for him.
Yeah, so he has beautiful golden brown skin.
Yeah, he calls it bright and beautiful brown skin. He's got perfect black hair, according to Jean.
Oh, yeah, and he uses pomade to keep it tamed, but he's got wavy curls that are a bit...
He's got a short beard that's just well manicured.
He's very tight, like everything's very tidy and just so.
And he has kind of big ears, which Jean loves that about him. I think the way that it makes him a little more accessible.
Yeah.
Like he thinks they're cute and he likes the ears, but also they represent that at least this guy doesn't have every single body part as perfect as possible.
Right. He's not this kind of carved statue. So Luis comes into Portland. He's been traded from another minor league team, and we learn that backstory. They were both on the Stanford baseball team together, and Luis left to get called up to the pros. And there had been this connection, this chemistry, this friend nebulousness, team-matery. They would practice, and there was just something there. And then Luis got called up, and he just ghosted.
Left without saying anything.
Without a word.
And that was several years ago, and Jean never bothered to follow up either. I don't think they've really talked it out, although they've seen each other because they play against each other in the minors. But it's this unsaid tension between them.
Yeah, but I think Jean was like, the onus is on him because he left me. And right at the time that Luis left, he left right before Jean came out as a trans man. So Luis wasn't on the team when that happened. And Luis comes and he's like cold shoulder machine, like can't look at him, sits next to him, leaves
they accidentally
like a foot
bump
of space.
A little, he's
so
falls back.
Jean's like, is he like hate me? Is he transphobic? Like what is
that was
what
his
is happening?
First concern.
Yeah. So there's all these kind of back elements going on, and none of the magic is there. Also, not unlike Poetry on Ice, when they first start playing together, it's horrible. They're stepping on each other's
way.
Yeah, they're just like not trusting each other, and it sounds really sucky.
Yeah. And Luis is being touted as the next star. The reason he's been traded to this minor league team is everybody knows he's going to get called up for their major
Golden
league
boy.
Team. He's going to be the next one to make it big. But he's not playing well. He's not hitting well. He's terrible in his fielding.
Yeah.
And that seems to be really since he switched to this team because he's so uncomfortable around Jean.
Yeah.
So they are in a funk.
Well, and it's he had been called up to the major leagues, and on the way to like his first game,
Yeah, this happened 2 years prior. His very first game, he's on his way there.
He was in this horrible accident, and so he had this huge recuperation, and his body's just coming back online. So he'd been re-entered into the minor league. So everyone's just like, this is this holding tank for this star. But as Luis comes, they give him all this grace because he's actually like objectively not good. Like,
right.
He's literally
he's
dropping
really
the ball. So as with any book, the whole book is, you're going to get all the spoilers, but also we just trust that people are going to read trigger warnings if they need to. They'll look at the book or the website, like that's a thing. But I read tons of reviews, and there's reviewers that are like, I have no triggers, I love red flags, and
nice flex.
Yeah, yeah, there's nothing
trauma-free life here.
Yeah. Nice flex. And I was reading this, and I was getting fussy and uncomfortable and kind of like, oh. And I was fussing to Hollie in text about it, because we text back and forth as we're reading the books to prepare. I was making a comment on one of the characters' thought process and judging it. And Hollie wrote back and said, well, I don't have ADHD, nor do I have anxiety, and so I'm more assessing. And I was like, oh, I have ADHD and I have anxiety.
It's not as fun to read about this fictional world, is it?
And Gene has ADHD, and so he has some of the challenges that many people with ADHD experience, like not being able to finish a project, things are half done, etc. So Luis is in the throes of the unmanaged anxiety, and it is not enjoyable for me to read. At one point he has a panic attack in a bathtub, and I was like, oh, and I was like, wait, I've been in that bathtub. I don't like that bathtub. So I texted Hollie, and I was like, it's so funny. Like, I would rather imagine being locked in a psychopath's dungeon, in a like dark horror romance. Like, that is relaxing. But reading about someone's panic attack in a bathtub, I'm like, oh God, no.
Too real.
Too real. So it's interesting how trigger warnings work, and most mental health rep trigger warning or content notes, they don't really bother me, but for some reason the way Luis's anxiety presented, I was like, oh my God, it's making me uncomfortable.
I guess that means it was very realistic?
That is a testimony to the excellent representation and how KT Hoffman did it. That is not a negative in any way, but it's more just, there's a reason that there's content warnings on books. Like, someone perhaps who's been locked in a basement by a psychopath
might not like that book.
Might not like that book.
That's
so it's just good to know.
Yeah, there was a lot of representation of just various types of people in this book.
It was very realistic, because it's like in most of the books, most people are fully able-bodied and have not had a ton of challenges that maybe other people have had, whether their health or physical or what.
Or they have one problem,
and that's the whole.
And they fix it.
Yeah.
In the course of the book.
Yeah, love fixes it.
Well, of course, a dick fixes it.
A dick.
But in this case, they just kind of had life in the background, and it wasn't always resolved. So he's a side character, but he's hard of hearing, and whenever he's in a scene, they are signing and talking at the same time. Although it's not really part of the plot at all. It's just who the character is.
Right.
There's all kinds of queer characters.
Yeah.
The coach is a lesbian. Gene is trans.
Yeah.
And Gene is this trailblazer. And Gene says the coach is giving him a hard time at one point, saying, "Gene, you're the first openly trans athlete, and you're openly gay."
And he's like, "I just want to be a baseball
player." He said, "I didn't want to be the first. I don't mind being a trans athlete, but I just want to be a baseball player." And then she says something like, "Well, you don't have that choice. That's not up to you."
Yeah.
So she was an interesting character, Coach Baker.
Yeah.
Part of her reactions, I kind of wanted to strangle her a little bit.
Yeah, she kind of reminded me of the coach character on the TV show Glee. The actress Jane, I'm blanking, but anyways, this kind of slightly bully, slightly caring.
She definitely had
riding the line.
Some emotional depth to her when she needed it, and
she cared about them.
A mentor, like a heartwarming mentor at times, but then also at times she was emotionally manipulative.
Yeah, and projecting like a crazy person.
Yeah. Which maybe that's just how
Life
people
is.
are. People are
Yeah.
complex. They don't always get it
Imperfect.
right.
Yeah. But I really liked with KT Hoffman the scope of characters when Jean went and met Luis's family. It's this whole like brood of adult children now, and one of the daughters, grown daughters, it has Down syndrome, and they just mention it it's just like he's kind of
As he's describing every other character. That's
yeah,
one of the characters.
I love how it was just all of these things are woven in, because that is actually all of our lives, right? Everyone, we are all so intricate, and everyone has so many pieces to the story around them, and it's nice to read that in a way, like you said, where it's not like, oh, and here is some diversity, friends.
I really appreciated how the team that they played on was the Beaverton Beavers, and they...
Is that a real team?
No, it's not. Every other team that is mentioned in the book, they're all real. It's all nonfiction, the baseball teams, except for the Portland Lumberjacks and their AAA affiliate, the Beaverton Beavers. But I just liked that the male-male romance we're reading is for the Beavers, which is not a team name that I have heard before.
No.
It made me chuckle.
It's evocative.
So while they played in Beaverton, there was also a fair bit of the setting in Portland.
Yeah,
I think that's even where he lives, yeah, because he's rooming with one of his teammates who used to be very successful in the majors, but now he's at the end of his career. So that was a mentor of his.
It's very much Portland love with... There's a lot of the setting and the rain outside, or the lush greenness, or even this kind of reverence for this beat up stadium out in Beaverton, but also the stadium in Portland, and how the Portland Stadium for the Lumberjacks has some of the best snacks in the league. Or is that the Miners team?
I think he recognizes neither one of them have good snacks. It's just what he grew up with. So he's got this almost nostalgia that he carries with him, because his dad was also a baseball player and played for Portland. So when he was growing up, he used to go to, I think, both the minor league and the major league stadium, watching his dad and watching games. So he just, it's part of his love of baseball is encompassed in his love of Portland.
Yeah,
and Beaverton.
His dad was fairly good, but then was becoming a dad and decided to focus on being a dad instead of pursuing, because it also, I didn't know this about baseball life, but they have a game every night for like 6 months.
Yeah, it's almost every night, and that's in the majors. But even in this AAA, which is the highest minor league team that you can get, I think they have 150 games in the course of those 6 months. So it's not quite as many as the big leagues, but
on the road,
they play a lot. And there's quite a few scenes where they're having to travel, and they're in a bus for 12 hours.
It's not
or
glamour travel.
Maybe they get economy in an airplane if they're lucky, and they're all crunched together.
Yeah, it's usually the best.
Ooh, you got to love the sport to stick with it.
It sounds like a garage band trying to launch. You know, they buy like the crappy van, and they load it up, and they drive everywhere.
I loved the baseball side of this book because I like baseball.
Yeah.
But it did strike me as I was reading it, there were so many little things that were described, or little instances, that I knew what the significance was from a baseball standpoint, but I don't feel like it was really explained.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, his mentor teammate who he lives with, this guy named Vince, it's described that he's a Cy Young winner, which is a really big deal. But if you don't know who Cy Young is, or what the Cy Young Award is, then that might not transmit the same amount of like gravitas that he has. That is an award that's given out in the major leagues once a year to the best pitcher in each league. So there's actually 2 pitchers that get it each year. Yeah. So that's not a little thing. So I feel like maybe the book would hit a little harder for readers that aren't as familiar with baseball if things were explained.
Yeah, I'm just learning this about Cy Young.
And some of the...
I was like, it's an award. He got an award.
Great, good for him. I'm sure his mother's very proud.
Yeah.
And some of the tension, or the excitement within the games themselves.
Yeah.
Jean was saying, oh, I got up to the plate and I worked a 10-pitch count. And that's a really good thing for a batter to do.
What's a 10-pitch count?
Wearing down the pitcher, and it's demonstrating what a good batter he is. He's the leadoff batter. That also communicates...
So does it mean like you make them throw poorly, or...?
It just means that you keep fouling off pitches, so your at bat lasts a long time. So either you end up, well, hopefully either getting a hit at the end of all this or drawing a walk at the end of it. So it would basically, if each little at bat is a battle between the pitcher and the batter.
Oh.
And there's, countless ones of these throughout the game.
I just thought it was a boring moment, but no, it's a battle.
It kind of shows that the batter won that little battle, and there's many of them throughout a game.
Oh.
So there were a lot of instances like that where I was kind of like, okay, yeah, way to go, baseball. But thinking in the back of my head, like, I bet Annie doesn't know what's going on right now.
Annie is missing this.
That's how I base my reviews of whether or not things are being explained.
My elementary school era recreational league softball did not prepare me with these concepts of the battle.
WWAK.
WWAK.
What would Annie know?
I mean,
not this.
Not this.
But I did like it. I enjoyed it.
One fun thing for me reading about this was my grandpa lived in this very tiny town. My grandparents owned a very tiny town in Montana, and they had what Holly just informed me is a very low ranking level of a minor league team, as a rookie league. So like down there. And he was such a fan. Like we would go, every time I went to visit, we'd go. He had his like flat back hat, his little button up, he's got his little chair cushion.
Would he keep score manually on paper?
Him and his little dude pack, they had the transistor radio, so they're hearing the announcer as the announcer, and inevitably someone's making notes.
Sure.
And they really were committed, even though the games were not exciting and the team was not good, but they were, there's this relationship to professional sports that is so interesting, and it is, I think, across most professional sports where people develop like a connection.
It starts to feel like a we instead of an us.
Yeah, like we're gonna get it, we're bringing it home,
we're gonna win this time.
We're gonna win.
Oh, are
this
you?
time.
You're just sitting in the stands.
Yeah.
But I fall victim to the same mentality. It's kind of fun.
It's enjoyable. It's like a collective, feels like you're part of, and I think part of this too is interesting with Jean's character and then KT Hoffman's pick of this like concept of baseball is like the all-American sport, and then Jean is very intentionally a trans man in this kind of all-American sport, and of this like the collective we and the spirit of this like game. And Jean's character throughout is in love with that idea of this like the optimism of the game, that you can always turn it around, that like the underdog can win, even someone with a 5'2" body can be a champion.
He is such an optimist that shines through always.
Mm-hmm.
And that charmed me a lot by him for the first half of the book. I thought, oh, this is so cute. He just always wants to win, even if they're losing, even if they're the worst team in the league. He has this spirit that is unyielding. But it actually took a slightly sad turn towards the end of the book, because you start to realize when he has some more thoughts about what he wants and what he deserves and how things are going to go for him, that I think a lot of his optimism is coming from a place of low self-worth, which I haven't really thought of that connection before, but he describes that it's okay for him to hope for things. And it's okay for him to have hope about a whole team or a city or a group, but he doesn't deserve to want something, because that's selfish. And if he wants something, that's just him saying that that's for him alone. And that's part of the reason that he doesn't fight for this love when things get tricky.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't feel like he has a right to want something all for himself, especially if that thing might have a negative implication for the health of the entire baseball team. Because he and Luis are competing for the same spot in the major league team.
Yeah.
They both are playing the same position. He ends up moving over to second base because Luis comes in as the shortstop, but they're kind of competing for the same opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And he just feels like, yeah, this is something I've dreamt out about my whole life, but I could never actually let myself want it because I don't deserve it.
Do you think it's that he doesn't think he deserves it, or maybe there's that, but it's like the fear of wanting it and not getting it is too scary, so it's easier to just not want and then So
yeah, that's probably some of it, but I definitely read it as a terrible self-worth problem that he didn't really acknowledge that he had, and he doesn't seem to be that way because he's so confident about his baseball skill. But then there's this disconnect between the type of confident man he is on the field, and not just on the field, but even in his own head when he's thinking about baseball, versus how he feels about how he fits in the locker room or in social situations.
Yeah, was interesting thinking about, because Hollie and I are writing a romance novel together, and it is interesting to think about how authors portray their characters. So with Jean, it's like, especially because it's this third person kind of omniscient narrator, you see Jean in these games, and it's just, there's not even any cockiness. It's just this like fact of like, I'm great at baseball. I do it and I'm good at it and that's it. And so it's this, you have to have a certain sense of self to compete at that level. Like there's just no question. But then internally, he's very fragile and highly overthinking, and it's attributed to his ADHD, can relate, but also I saw that there could have been an opportunity where like the confidence of the sports ability would have also been in his thought process to a degree of like, so that part felt really separate of like his physical ability, and then this like tender-hearted person felt like kind of a different person.
Yeah, and he talks about how when his mentor kind of, Vince, this other guy who won the Cy Young, takes him under his wing, and that made such a difference because he invited him out to drinks as a celebration after a game one time. And until Vince had kind of pressured him and said, come on, you should go, the whole team's there, he never went because I got the impression he just was never explicitly invited, so he thought he didn't belong. Yeah. So we had a lot of that, maybe imposter syndrome, that might be one way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think it's like intense self-focus, which I have been victim of many times, but it's this kind of like hyper perception that everyone else is thinking about me and that I'm apart from, I'm separate from. So I can relate. And it is usually if I'm in a period of being less fantastic with mental health.
So as a reader, I didn't know if part of this lack of confidence, especially in social situations, was because of his experience as a trans man and because of the way he was a trailblazer in his sport, or if it was maybe because of his ADHD, or if it was just his personality.
Yeah, probably all of it. That's a big weight to bear, to be, the author, KT Hoffman, at the beginning wrote specifically, this is about a gay transgender man existing in the very cisgender heterosexual space of men's professional baseball. So yeah, I can imagine there is a lot, his teammates are awesome. Like he's just one of the guys and part of the team, but that's like kind of a potentially has a lot of ramifications, or could. So that makes sense that you would overthink things because there's like emotional safety, physical safety. And I really liked reading this ahead of time too, because I have read different romances with all different people and different romances with trans like main characters, and how they have sex is always different in each book, as is cisgender people, anyone. But I like how the author said, please know, just as trans people use many different words to describe our bodies, because KT Hoffman is also a trans man, for reasons as varied as the people these words describe, Jean chooses his because they are comfortable to him. They may not be the words every trans man would choose, but they are his, which I think was lovely to read, especially for someone who, I'm a cisgender woman, and it's helpful for me to kind of have parameters of like how to look at it, and also to read it and say, oh, this isn't blanket apply to everyone. So
it was good context. Do you imagine yourself as the main character, or do you immerse yourself and you're more of a third person watching?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I'm the empathy jellyfish, and I go into whatever character I'm reading. And yeah.
I don't think I do that at all. I think I definitely am into the immersion of the book. It's not that I'm not turned into it, but I don't imagine myself as one of the characters. I'm more just get like a front row seat to what's happening.
Maybe it's, I feel not wholly that I'm so lost that I'm in this like virtual reality, but it's kind of a half and half. So I'm reading it, but then I'm also, if they're having sex, like I'm feeling that. Or if they're, you know, just kick their boss in the face by accident, I'm like, ooh! And so I think I'm an experiencer.
I have a Fitbit, and it takes my heart rate.
Oh my God.
And I have looked before out of curiosity when I'm reading various scenes if my heart rate increases, and it doesn't.
Even if it's like a really hot sex scene?
No. And I was disappointed. I thought maybe I could like track what's going on in the book, like one of those, you know, the plot goes up and then it calms down and then there's tension and then there's a sex scene, but it's just flatline. It's just me sitting there.
I think we need to get data points of like, let's look specifically during sex scenes and see which, if any.
I don't think Fitbook Premium offers that, but we can suggest it maybe in like their...
We can write them a strongly worded letter.
Be like, let me tell you how to get more people onto your subscription plan.
Dear fitness tracker, I'm an avid romance reader. Me and my brethren want to know. Yeah, that's a great question.
This book, my favorite part was getting to know Jean, but also just the way these two characters fell in love.
It was very sweet.
It was so tentative. It's very respectful, so concerned about consent.
Yeah.
I mean, at first, Jean was really mad at Luis because of the way he ghosted him. So there's a little bit of that, you know, I don't like you. But then pretty quickly on, he realizes, oh man, Luis is struggling. He's got bad anxiety.
He's in a bathtub.
Yeah, he's in a bathtub trying to breathe through his nose.
With his emotional support dog.
Oh yeah, he's the whole book. He's got Dodger, an emotional support dog that follows him around.
I know.
I liked Dodger.
Yeah.
And then Jean feels some shame, and he just thinks, oh man, I was just as bad as all these people that are, you know, pressuring him. And he said something to the effect of, I was also seeing the worst in him, and he's my teammate. Like, I need to be better than that.
Yeah.
And so then he changes his attitude. It's not so much that he's instantly in love. It was a slow burn. But he just is coming at Luis with an open heart and an open mind and trying to make things as good as he can in a bad situation.
Yeah.
But then they just slowly... they give each other rides in the truck, and it's, oh, look at how close his leg is to mine on the bench, and they're always asking each other questions.
Yeah. I kind of evoked the feeling, especially in the early part where they're, like you said, this kind of like slow creeping. It's none of this like, throw him against the wall and take what I want. And it reminded me of when I was a sophomore in high school, and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to want, but I knew that there's this kind of sense of like a growing sexual something in me of like, oh, feeling amorous and having people that I had crushes on, but like, of course I knew what sex was, but that's not what I wanted, but I wanted that like kind of intimacy and romance. And there was this guy I had a crush on, and I would picture us, this was like my go-to fantasy, slow dancing in my living room to It's All Right by Big Head Todd and the Monsters.
Wow, that's so specific.
And it was so sweet. Like, that song's really sweet. But that's kind of what it felt like, this very, like, innocence, not the right word, but just like...
simple, maybe.
And like pure or something, where it's just this, like, I just have this, like, want for this like, closeness and this feeling that I'm going to get by being near them. And so I kind of kept picturing me like slow dancing with my crush to that song.
I think that's why it felt a little young adult. Not in the subject matter so much, but it did feel like that young love. Like
that awakening. And Jean has had a boyfriend previous to this, and Luis dated on the down low.
One thing I really liked about their relationship is, and they both said this at different times, but they would ask each other questions, and sometimes Jean was like, couldn't you just look that up on Wikipedia? And then their answer would be, well, I want to know what you want me to know. I want you to tell me. If you tell me that you're gay, then I know you're gay. I'm not going to rely on asking a teammate or seeing what Wikipedia has to say. And they both made mention to that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like that too, because it's even
so respectful.
It is respectful, and also, yeah, even if someone does know something, maybe I don't want to know that you know, and I'd prefer
and
just
I just
to
want
be
to
like
tell
this.
you in my own way, or maybe
or
that's
not
not accurate.
Yeah, and even the consent, at first I was like, oh, this is heavy-handed consent. Ha ha ha, not really. But then as I was reading more, it was really very sweet, because it's this kind of Luis's way of being really present with Jean and what Jean wants and how Jean wants to share his body or not. And it was actually this like very loving, sweet thing. And of course, Jean reciprocated. And Luis is like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, go ahead. One of the questions when they're getting to know each other, it's out of the blue. Jean asks, what Major League Baseball mascot would you most like to fuck? And this part made me laugh out loud, but Annie didn't really know the mascots.
It's like, I get that it's a joke because they're mascots, but...
Yeah, so Jean says, oh, for me, it's the Philly Fanatic. And this is what the Philly Fanatic looks like. It's not a human. He's got this big, like, nose funnel thing, which is... I would never have thought of it as phallic before, but in the context of the book, I was just imagining him, like, humping the Fanatic's nose. That was really funny. And of course,
flashlight.
Yeah, a green furry. I think the lore of the Philly Fanatic is that he's a 300-pound flightless bird from the Galapagos Islands.
It looked kind of parody.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. And then Jean, so Luis is just appalled, but also laughing. And then Jean says, oh, what's my second choice? Thank you for asking, even though Luis didn't ask. And he says, Mr. Met. And that is just like a mythological creature of a man's body and a baseball head. And then Luis is saying, like, you're not even picking humans. And in that conversation, Luis says, through some teasing, that he would pick the lumberjack, the mascot of Portland. And he's kind of saying, like, yeah, at least it's a human being. But of course, that's like the first time, they didn't even really bring it up, but that's one way that Luis is opening up
waving his flag,
his walls a little bit. Like, yeah, I don't know that there's any female mascots. They're usually, most of them are animals, so maybe the lumberjack is the best choice.
You are our expert on all this. I am.
Fair enough.
I'm just here in support. Who would be your go-to?
Ooh, boy. I have not thought of that at all. Even
It
after...
wasn't one of the questions at the back of the book?
My favorite team is the San Francisco Giants, and their mascot is either a seal or a crab. So that's a real no.
I have been to a game, and I don't remember ever seeing a seal or a crab.
Lou Seal is the main mascot.
Oh, okay.
Which, of course, always makes me think of Arrested Development.
Yes.
Because the mom was Lou Seal, and then didn't Buster get his arm bitten off by a loose seal? But this is not loose seal, it's Lou Seal, and looks like he's got a hula hoop inside of his costume, and so he kind of like shakes his hips and they're out to here.
Okay, now I remember.
It's not a particularly flattering look. I don't think it's meant to be.
No, it's generally, they're not like going for sexy.
Which mascot has the most? I guess that's what the cheerleaders are for. Is that where they get their sex appeal?
Maybe so.
Cheerleaders aren't so much a thing in baseball. That's more of a football thing.
Do
although
they have
exist.
Cheerleaders in baseball?
Sometimes they do have cheerleaders that like stand on top of the dugout and do a little dance for a few minutes, but it's not a staple.
Are they self-appointed? Or are they like actual?
I think they're paid employees, but I don't think they're paid much.
Okay.
It's not as prestigious as a football cheerleader.
Got it.
Certainly.
Maybe we need to start our own. Fun fact, Holly got to throw out baseball pitch for the Giants one year.
I did, the first pitch. Actually,
bit of a celebrity, guys.
So I found out I was going to throw out the first pitch. I won a raffle. And this was back before scams were so common that when I found out I won, I was excited. I didn't just think like, that's bullshit, and then like ignore them. I loved it so much. I got to go ahead of time and meet some players and sit in the dugout. And they had said, first pitch. And so while I'm waiting it's almost my turn and I'm kind of near the dugout, the announcers are like, and now the first pitch. And a different person went out there. It's just like, what the hell? I knew so many people that I had invited that were in the stands. And so then this random dude, he throws the first pitch. And then they go, and now the first toss. It's Hollie. And apparently there's a difference between the first pitch and the first toss. And I was the first toss, but it lost just a little bit of its luster when I was like, you sons of bitches. It's not even...
You dirty mother.
Yeah, but I did get to pitch the ball. I got to take it home with me. I guess I shouldn't be complaining because it was like one of the most amazing days. But just so you know, they do have a little bit of a loophole there.
That is a total loophole. It's like 1 year for my birthday, my wife said, for your birthday, I'm going to bring you bag coffee every day for a year. And I was like, fuck yeah.
That's pretty good.
And then like 2 days later, I was like, where's my bed coffee? And you were going to give it to me every day. And she goes, oh, I meant in my heart. So it's not just the Giants with the loophole.
Wow, what a smooth operator she is.
I was like, in your heart?
I'm going to love you as if I were a person giving you bed coffee.
I'm bringing you bed coffee in my heart.
Oh.
First toss. We shall also, along with the Fitbit, send a strongly worded letter to the Giants team from 15 years ago. Okay, Hollie, I know you went on a financial rabbit hole.
Yeah, so in the book, Gene gets called up to the majors, and he's there for 3 weeks. And unfortunately, he does a terrible job while he's there, so then he gets sent back down, which is pretty
Spoiler,
common.
he ends up there.
Yeah, he ends up there at the end of the book. But I just kind of thought it was fun because he didn't mention much about the lifestyle changes and excitement that caused for him. It was more just like, yeah, I was really excited and then I was disappointed.
And they all have roommates, and he says, like, we all just barely make any money.
Yeah, minor league baseball players are poor. So I think the starting salary for a AAA player is $35,000. And I can't imagine he was getting much more than that. Probably just that, because he wasn't even drafted. He got hired, brought on, signed a contract because
in the Bay Area. Is that what they'd pay someone?
Yeah, that's recent. They just recently got a union that helped give them more money.
That is some bananas.
Yeah, and so some of them might make more, but a lot of them don't. But once you sign a contract and you play for a major league team, the minimum there is $750,000.
So that's like bottom of the barrel.
Yes.
Okay.
So whenever the minor league player gets called up, it's prorated. So however long they're up there, they're getting that salary increase. And not only that, but they get a per diem anytime they're on the road of like $120 or something.
2 sandwiches.
So basically the per diem he's getting as a major league player is the same as his whole salary as a minor league player. So for him being up there for 3 weeks, that was like an $80,000 at least increase in what he would have usually gotten just in that 3-week period.
That is so brutal to like make people sacrifice. Like you kind of have to have a wealthy partner or something so you don't.
There are a lot of sad stories of minor league players, the guys that are in it for their whole career, and up until recently they didn't really have good health care. Yeah, it's brutal.
That is brutal.
But then if they get called up, it's this huge just boon financially. And I wish there had been a little bit of Gene's mentality as he got that. He did end up shortly thereafter moving into a better apartment with Luis, and then he got signed on the team full-time the next year. So of course at that point he was making a lot of money.
Yeah. This was really a super fun book to read. Mm-hmm. It was sweet, and it was a great romance, and it was about baseball, and it was also this like very sweet love story. And just one of the themes that I thought was interesting was this concept, like the author KT Hoffman says this book is about optimism and hope. But there's this piece, and I see it a lot in romance novels, where there's this concept of sacrificing, right? Like, I'm giving up this because I think it's what's best for you, which is what Gene does when he breaks up with Luis, because he thinks he's holding back Luis from progressing into this position that Luis doesn't even really want in the major leagues. But everyone suffers as a result, right? Like the team sucks because Jean's not playing well. Luis isn't happy. They're not together, so their sex life isn't happy. Their hearts are broken. And it is kind of takes away the agency of the person when you say, oh, I'm doing this for you. And
is it really that selfless?
Or it's just very, I just have been practicing this a lot in my life of like whole, capable, and resourceful. Every person is whole, capable, and resourceful. So even if I think they should make another decision, even if I think they might resent me if they make the decision that I'm letting them make, I have to trust that they're whole, capable, and resourceful because I'm not them. And so the coach does it to Jean.
Jean does it to Luis. Luis kind of did it to Jean too.
Yeah, and so everyone's trying to like best interest each other, but it's just an interesting thing. But it happens in romance novels.
It does.
All the
It's
time.
almost like the grovel. Oh, prove to me how much you love me and how sorry you are.
Yeah, I have to leave you because I love you so much and I'm a bad man, or because
I'm gonna corrupt you.
Yeah, or like Emily Henry, Great Big Beautiful Life, because I know this secret that I can't tell you, and so it's always in the interest of the other person. But so that's my own growth arc. I am in the character.
Nice. That's pretty far along your arc.
Blood,
then.
sweat, and tears, baby. Okay. So what is our next book, Holly? I'm excited. I haven't read this one.
Okay, this one I've actually read and you haven't. I think this is the first. We are reading Lola and the Millionaires by Catherine Moon.
Ooh.
This is an Omega verse.
So she has multiple lovers.
Yes.
She's shared by the pack. Sophie wants to read it too. Lola and the Millionaires by
Catherine Moon.
And today we reviewed The Prospects by KT Hoffman, and it's KT, the initials, and it is wonderful. Check it out. Go to their website and buy their book and tell your friends and watch our show because we love talking about books with you, and Sophie likes it too.
Good girl, Sophie. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Happily ever after.